Torah reading for the first day of Sukkos, which is from Emor, chapter 22, verse 27. Shor o Chesev. So we're going to do this Torah reading, and the reason why it is, hold on one second, just let me get the sitter here. The reason why this is the Torah reading for the first day of Sukkot is because it ends by talking about the holidays. Hold on one second. So, hold on one second. All right, let's get started here. Oh, okay, Eric, great to see you. So we're going to do now, Baruch Hashem, the Torah reading for the first day of Sukkot. Okay, so the Torah reading is, the first day of Sukkot from Leviticus. So it's from Leviticus chapter 22, verse 26. Parshas Emor. You have it, everyone? Chapter 22, verse 26. And so Asher will read for us. And the reason why, the primary reason why we read this is because it discusses, at the end of the discussion, discusses the holidays. But at the beginning, it doesn't seem to have anything related to the holidays. So here, Asher, you read. Sefer Vayikra, Parachaf Bet, Pasachaf Vav. It's the passage in Parshas Emor. Now, boys, grab a chumash and bring it in. Pasachaf Vav. Shor Chasef Oiz. Right, Daber Adonai Moshe Lemor. Right, God spoke to Moshe saying, "Oh Yossi." So God spoke to Moshe saying, Shor Chasef Oiz. If there's an ox, you have it, Asher? Yeah. What page is it on for everybody who has the Steinsaltz? 681. So Shor Chasef Oiz. So Asher, you read. So what's a shor? A shor is an ox. A chasef is a sheep, and aiz is a goat. Okay, so an ox or a sheep or a goat, when it gives birth, when it's born, then 7 days it shall be for its mother, and the 8th day it can be brought as a korban to Hashem. You can't slaughter the animal until it's 8 days old. Doesn't say the reasoning for it here, just tells us that. Ki v'oed. So Rashi tells us here. So this excludes a case of a Yotzei Dofen. Yotzei Dofen is an unusual birth, which means a C-section. If it would be born by a C-section, then it can never be offered as a korban. So that's what the pasuk is telling us. But this is actually relevant to the laws of the holidays, because the holidays, you have an increase in the korbanos. And so now we have the next law, which is actually an incredible law that everybody needs to know. What's this next halacha? Yossi, read it. Vishor. Exactly. So what does that teach us? Okay, so an ox or a sheep and its offspring, you should not slaughter on one day. Now before we get into the Rashi on this, I remember the Gemara on this. What's going to happen, Yossi? You go into Matis and buy a nice steak for the holiday, and then Asher goes into Shalom's and gets a geschmack veal for the holiday. How do you know they're not the same? How do you know that the one is not the offspring? How do you know that they weren't slaughtered on the, you go into the, in those days they didn't have supermarkets. So you go to the butcher, you buy a mama, and you buy the coming in by the baby. How do you know they're not the same? All of Israel needs to know what the other one is eating. They need to know. We all need to be holding. We all need to be holding when it comes to the holiday. We can't assume that we can't assume what goes on in the other kitchens. We can never take for granted. So therefore, we always have to know what's going on. So therefore, if you have to knock on your door, where did you get your sheep? Was this a newborn mother? Where did you get your baby? And that way you know. And then you can knock on somebody's door and the guy says, listen, I have nothing to eat. And say, of course, come to my home for the holiday. Everybody should try, if you can, to make a donation. I don't know them personally. I met the guy once, but to Yad Yehuda before the holiday, because this is a local soup kitchen, and make sure that everybody has food to eat for the holiday. So, yeah. So today they give a hashgacha. So they know when they give a hashgacha, they make sure they're not slaughtered the mother and the offspring. I mean, realistically nowadays, most places it's not a concern, because the industrial things, they're not going to slaughter a calf the day it's born. They're going to want to get some fat on it. And they're also, they're not going to slaughter a mother right after it's born. But in those days, the guy moving things out, he needs to be sure. So, but it's the idea that all of Israel is responsible for each other, or else you'll have a tremendous sin. God forbid. Yossi, please read the Rashi. Oh, Sylvia Espino. We're in chapter 22, Pasuk Chav Ches. Ha'im Bab. Okay, so Rashi says, so Rashi tells us this law about a mother, about an animal and its offspring, only applies to the mother. It doesn't apply to the father and its offspring. And so that's what Rashi says. This is, if I remember correctly, this was a dispute in the Gemara, but Rashi says it only applies to the mother and the offspring, not the father and the offspring. So, so you see, it's a machlokas whether it applies. And Rashi says, Rashi paskins, and it's only the mother and the offspring. What's the reasoning for this law? What's the reasoning for this law? Why do we have the reasoning for this law? Okay, so that we have to. What's the logic? Why can't you slaughter the mother and the offspring on the same day? Rashi, it's too cruel. Why? I mean, how does the offspring know? Let's see here. Hold on one second. Even though we don't usually. Hello, come on in, my friends. Okay, here. We're looking at this. Here. So we're looking at the Sefer Achinuch here. The Sefer Achinuch says, even though we typically only study Rashi here, now let's look at the law of the Sefer Achinuch. What does the Sefer Achinuch always tells? The source of the mitzvah and the reason for the mitzvah. He says, at the root of this mitzvah lies the purpose that a man should reflect in his heart that the watchful care of Hashem extends to all species of living creatures generally. And it's his concern that they will endure forever. And therefore, Hashem doesn't want any of the species to become extinct. So now, even though God watches over the human species as an individual, that's not so with other living creatures. Rather, Hashem says concern or hashgacha over the species as a whole. And so therefore, in order to make us basically, I'll just go on. So basically, first of all, what he's saying is, we're in chapter 22, verse 20, I don't know, 28 now. Because we're concerned that if you slaughter a mother and its offspring on the same day, you could wipe out the whole species. Even though you're not going to wipe out the whole species just by slaughtering a mother and its offspring, the idea is there. And so God is telling us that even though Hashem only gives the hashgacha for each individual human being, but there is hashgacha for the animal kingdom as a whole, meaning God gets involved in the animal kingdom as a whole. For each of us individually, Hashem is watching us, and the whole world is revolving around our lives. Hello, hello, hello. But for the hey, how we doing? My eyesight's so bad. Gotta give me a hug there. Give me a hug here. Grab a chumash. Oh my gosh, you're looking amazing, Joel. You're looking amazing. Love you. All right, I love it. So we're discussing something, a very deep concept here, Joel. Even though we just read the Rashi, and normally we only do Rashi here, but we're discussing the idea of the prohibition of osovi espinol, that you're not allowed to slaughter a mother and its offspring on the same day. And the Sefer Chinuch has told us the following idea. So first of all, we have to take a step back, that there's this concept of hashgacha. You know what hashgacha is? It's the idea that there's divine providence over everything we do in our lives, that Hashem is like arranging it up there in heaven. So God forbid, we missed the bus. It was all part of God's plan. We weren't supposed to be on that bus. Okay, whatever that means exactly, that concept doesn't apply to animals. But it does apply to animals as a species as a whole. So as an entire species, there's a warning. God is telling us you cannot make an animal species extinct. And so therefore, it's symbolic. If we slaughter a mother and its offspring on the same day, symbolically that could lead to, on some broader level, the ultimate extinction, making that whole species extinct. So we have to be careful about it. And then he says on, and also it is we also want to instill in our hearts characteristic of compassion, and take us away from the aspect of cruelty. So even though, this is what the Sefer Chinuch says, even though we're allowed to eat animals, it's not prohibited for a Jew to eat animals, and we're allowed to kill them. But nevertheless, so we're allowed to kill the animals, but it's still cruel to kill a mother and its offspring on the same day. So there has to be a balance. We're allowed to kill the animal, but we have to be within that context to try and be as compassionate as possible. Some would say that really that means that we shouldn't kill it at all, but that's and so now this is what I was referring to. This Gemara here, he quotes it here, that this is what it was taught in Chulin 83a. There are 4 times a year that whoever sells an animal to his friend has to say, I sold it, I sold the other part of it, because at those 4 times, there's the concern, there's so many animals being sold. And one of those 4 times where the animals were so frequently sold, you have to be worried that they're going to both be slaughtered on the same day. What is it? So it's the last day of Sukkot, the day before the first day of Pesach, day before Shavuot, and the day before Rosh Hashanah, and some say even the day before Yom Kippur. Okay, so anyway, once we have the Sefer Chinuch open, why do you have to wait 7 days before bringing an animal as a carbon? You can only do it on the 8th day. And so the reason for this is that because he says that the reason is because before it's 8 days old, it's too young, it's not worth anything. And so the offering has to be of substance and of value. Anyway, okay, so we got a little tangent because we usually don't go into the Sefer Chinuch, but we had to fill this up. We had to explain. Okay, so now go on. Maybe we'll call on Joel to read. Joel, chapter 22, pasuk Chaf Tet. We want to, we remember Joel when he was younger than you guys. Yeah, Parachaf that of Vayikra Pasuk Chav Tet, and then we're gonna V'chitis V'chu. Wait, Joel, you're living now in Vancouver? How do you like it there? Yeah, I know. Is there another Vancouver? Yeah. I never heard of that one. I think that I don't think anybody ever is. When you say Vancouver, we assume Canada, right? Yeah, and they treat you nicely there. I hope they appreciate the Skype that they have there with you. The just beautiful man of Joel. All right, so go on, Joel. Read the pasuk. Okay, so the pasuk says, when you slaughter a zevach todah Hashem, when you slaughter a zevach todah to God, v'ritzonchem tizbachu. It should be an appeasement. So this is actually something we've been discussing a lot in our tractate of the Daf Yomi Zvachim. This is going to make it that we're going to get into the law of making sure that you slaughter it with the intent to sprinkle the blood at the proper time, which is called pigul, if you have the wrong intent at the time of the sprinkling. And then there's also that if you slaughter the animal, read the Rashi, but if you slaughter the animal, and when you slaughter the animal, you have the intent to eat it beyond the proper time that you're allowed to eat it, then you're liable. And meaning to say, when you slaughter the sin offering, you say, okay, I'm going to eat it tomorrow, then you're liable for the punishment for that is, it's not kares, but it's a severe penalty. It's a severe penalty of, I think it's chayav misa, but from heaven. And, or else maybe it's just a law, but I have to check that. But the basic point is that when it comes to a sacrifice, meaning even if you ate it in the proper time, but if you had the wrong intent when you were slaughtering it, the whole sacrifice is disqualified. And what's the reasoning for that? Because everything about the korban is about the intent. If your intent is wrong when you do the korban, then you're just killing an animal. Then the whole concept of a korban is the intent. And so if the intent is off, everything is off there. It's not like when you give charity, let's say you give charity, let's say, listen, I have a lot of money, I'm going to give $10 million to the Federation. But you say, when you give the money, it's a very worthy cause, but you say, you're a little bit of a jerk about it, right? Whatever, it sometimes happens. So you're still doing good, even though it's not perfect, right? You're still doing good. But if you slaughter the korban with the wrong intent, you've done bad. You've done bad. The whole purpose of the korban is the intent. If your intent is not pure, it's bad. Like if your intent is not pure when you give the charity, you've still done something great. You've helped people. If your intent is not pure when you build a sukkah, at the end of the day, you still built a sukkah, and that's a function. But a korban is all about the intent.
Rabbi?
Hold on. 1 second, Rabbi Yosef. Is that the only mitzvah that's only the intent?
I don't. Maybe we could come up with other examples, but it's the whole concept here. In the Torah, it might be the only one where if you say, when I'm eating this matzah, if you say, I'm eating the matzah with the intent to fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach, which is tomorrow, it doesn't matter. You're eating it at the right time. But with the korban, it's disqualified. It's only the korban. And not only are you not fulfilling your obligation, but you're liable for in the case of to sprinkle the blood, kares, pigul. It's obscene. It's obscene.
Is this law also traced to like Aaron's sons, or was that not a korban they were offering?
So we don't know exactly what they did. They brought an Eish Sarah, foreign fire. They didn't bring it according. It's first of all, it's a great question. They didn't bring it according to the law. It wasn't commanded them. But here you're bringing the carbon. You don't everything technically right, but your intent that you thought maybe nobody else even knows was not proper. But it's the same concept with Aaron's sons. If when it comes to sacrifice, and also we could say about prayers, if your intent is not pure, everything is obscene. But Rabbi Yosef was about to say something. Yes.
I was just going to ask. I love the analogy with the money donation, but the difference maybe is that in the korban is also the Kohen. If his intent is wrong, but yours is okay, you aren't liable, right? If you brought it l'shem chatat and he's thought that it's olah or whatever, that's his liability. But
Okay, you know what? You could get into the details, Rabbi Yosef. It's a great question, but the point is the technicalities you can work out different ways, but the basic overriding point is that a korban, it's all about the intent, even more than the execution. Yeah.
I was trying to say that you can maybe even stop yourself by saying to the Kohen, is this the right thing? Am I correct about this intent, or can you please help me, get it right? And that way both of us are doing the right thing for the right reason. And
there are for sure you can do it that way. You should talk it out, make sure you have the right intent. But the point is, it's all about the intent. Eric has something. Yes, and then so
maybe Rashi will answer the question, but I understand that the teaching you're just giving us, but I'm not sure how Pasuk tells us that.
Oh no, the verse, Rashi is going to go through the exegesis, but this is the way the Gemara reads it. You're correct that it's not intuitive from the text of the Talmud, from the text of the Torah, that this is what it means. But that's the way the Gemara reads it. You're 100% correct that's not the way I would have intuitively read this verse. Yeah, Shepsel, and then I will read the Rashi.
So, to follow us supposed to be
right, excellent that the tefillos have replaced the karbanos, although the karbanos also had tefillos, but it's even more, the intent is much more important by the karbanos because you're killing an animal. And if the killing of the animal is not done with pure intent, then it's an obscene act. You're just killing an animal for the wrong reason. And that's just cruel and not appropriate and a sin. It's a tremendous sin. So that's why the intent has to be 100% pure. If at the end of the day your prayers are done with the wrong intent, you haven't really hurt anyone. I mean, you've maybe missed an opportunity. You maybe, obviously, if you're talking, you're disturbing other people, but you haven't killed an animal. Let's read what the Rashi says. What Rashi says, at the beginning of your offering, you have to make careful, as Rabbi Yosef says, at the beginning, make sure you have the right intent. It has to be on the same day. You shouldn't, the pasuk is warning us that you shouldn't slaughter it with the intent to eat it. You can't slaughter the Thanksgiving offering with the intent to eat it tomorrow. The Thanksgiving offering has been that day. That if you think machshavet psul, if you have the wrong intent when you slaughter it, it will not be a valid offering. Zebach Todah Hashem, and the way they read, the way Rashi is reading the pasuk is L'Ritzon. Make sure that you do it with the proper intent. Alternatively, L'Ritzon with Da'atchem. It means you have to have, and here's another idea, but it's similar. When you make the offering, you have to have da'at. You have to have intentionality. Let's say a person is just, like he's throwing his knife against the wall in the temple. He thinks he's some carnival barker, and he throws his knife and he slaughters the animal. It's no good. You have to have the intent. And you have to have the proper intent. And if you slaughter with the wrong, if you slaughter without any intent, it's no good. Most of the time, by most mitzvos, if you slaughter it with zero intent, it's okay. Let's say, and you fulfill it. Let's say you get up there, you came to shul, and you davened on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and you mumbled the prayers, and you didn't have it. You just weren't even thinking about it. But you got a mitzvah. You were there. You mumbled it. You said something. Right? No, right. But if you just did the animal and you killed it without any intent, you've done nothing. You've done nothing. It's disqualified. You can't continue with it. The whole concept of a korban is 100% dependent upon your intent. If you have the wrong intent, a severe penalty. If you don't have any intent, it's no good. Let's say you eat the matzah with no intent. It's okay. You fulfill the mitzvah. I'm going to ask you a tricky question now. And then we'll daven mincha. Let's say, okay, so this happened, by the way, that happens a lot. Let's say you're in the hospital, God forbid, and they say, okay, it's Pesach, here, we'll give you matzah. You don't even know it's Pesach, you're a Jew, you don't know it's Pesach, and they give you the matzah, and you eat it. So did you fulfill the mitzvah? Yeah, you ate the matzah on Pesach night, even though you ate it by accident. But let's say you're in some sort of, let's say, whatever. I don't want to say the scenario, but let's say there's somebody, it's a kid, and he's like bar mitzvah, and his parents say, eat the matzah. I'm not eating the matzah. And the parents are like shoving the matzah down his throat. You can imagine, it's abuse. And he says, I do not want to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. And they put it down. Does he fulfill the mitzvah? He said specifically, I don't want to do it.
He still did it.
So that's a debate. That's a machlokas. All right. We'll stop here. Daven mincha. Shkoyach.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.